Hey guys, welcome to episode 35 of the Retro Gaming Dads podcast, the weekly podcast for everything retro and retro inspired. Unfortunately, this week it is just me, Barry, as Phil is ill and Anthony is off camping. Coming up on this episode though, we are looking at a brand new mini console coming to market next year. Some new games come to Piepacker. Both Microsoft and Nintendo show off their indie showcases, and a cancelled Game Boy Color game heads to Kickstarter after 20 years. So first up, we'll have a look at the recently announced Amiga 500 Mini from Retro Games Limited. Now, personally, I'm a massive fan of the Commodore Amiga. I used to own an Amiga 1200, and I know back in the day, Phil owned a Amiga 500, mainly because that's the source of most of my games back then. So this new mini console is similar to the C64 Mini that they released a couple of years ago. The system takes form of a miniaturized Amiga 500 system. Unfortunately, the keyboard is non-functional, although the size of it'd be completely unusable anyway. It does come with a fantastic recreation of the Amiga 500 tank-style mouse, as well as an Amiga CD-style controller to play the 25 built-in titles. Now, they haven't released a list of all 25 titles. However, there's actually some great games in this list. A lot of them are Amiga staples, such as Simon the Sorcerer, The Chaos Engine, Alien Breed, Worms Director's Cut. Now, if the second half of the list of games is as strong as the first half, this is going to be absolutely amazing. However, they could have also told us all the good games up front, and the rest might be filler. We don't know until this gets released. Currently, this is due for release in March of 2022. It's available for £119.99 and is available for pre-order from Game and Amazon. Links will be in the description. Personally, I'm quite excited for it. I'll likely pre-order one. Very handily, my birthday is in March, so it might be my birthday present to myself. The company behind it, Retro Games Limited, have also announced that you can load your own titles onto it by using the USB, including WHD load titles. So for any Amiga fan that just wants something small and compact so that they can play all these great titles, apart from the price is a little bit high, but this seems amazing. I know if we can get hold of a second controller, me and Phil will be playing extreme violence on this till the cows come home. I'm certain of it. I would be interested to see if they include support for things like Workbench though, which they haven't announced, because to be honest, I'd like to have a little go with Deluxe Paint again. That used to be my go-to app when I had an Amiga 1200. And speaking of which, although this is modelled after the Amiga 500, they have announced it will work with Amiga 500 and 1200 titles. So any titles that are enhanced for the Amiga 1200's AGA chipset will actually benefit from it as well. Now, up next, the first of an absolute ton of games-related news that we've got this week. 3 new titles are heading to Piepacker. So this week we have got S.C.A.R.S, a PlayStation 1 4-player kart racing game in which you take control of a vehicle based around a particular animal. It's pretty fun, to be honest. It's not going to dethrone anything like Mario Kart, but if you can get 4 players, it's a good laugh. Next game is KKND2 Crossfire, or Kill, Crush and Destroy 2. Now, this is a real-time strategy game. This is available to play in 2 players, and again, was originally released on the PlayStation. Now, this is more of your Command & Conquer style RTS game, although it's a lot more tongue-in-cheek. So in this game, you take control of either the mutants, human survivors, or the robots after a catastrophic world war basically renders most of the Earth inhospitable. It's pretty cool, and since it was the 90s, Kill, Crush and Destroy, everything has to have its C's replaced with a K, a la Mortal Kombat. The final title is actually a Game Boy Advance game. This is Gekido Kintaro's Revenge. The PlayStation version of Gekido was already on Piepacker, which was a 3D brawler game. This one is obviously 2D, with it originally being on the Game Boy Advance, but I actually think this plays a lot better. Unfortunately, it does miss out on the multiplayer support. Now, this title has a much more story-driven focus and has some amazing anime-inspired cutscenes throughout. Definitely worth a play. It's not perfect. The pits in the game in particular are a bit of a nightmare because it's quite hard to judge when or not you go drop down them. But apart from that, definitely a great single-player game to add to Piepacker's roster. For those of you who aren't aware, Piepacker is an online service, and again, there'll be a link in the description below. Next up, for those looking forward to the next Sonic the Hedgehog movie, a little bit of information's come out in that Idris Elba will be playing the role of Knuckles. So now we know that beyond Sonic, Robotnik, and Tails, we will be seeing Knuckles in the sequel. Now, I would imagine he's probably going to play an antagonist towards Sonic, like he did in Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic Adventure. And like those titles, I would imagine Robotnik is going to trick him into thinking that Sonic is the bad guy. And it'll all be a massive misunderstanding. They'll probably come together and they'll defeat Robotnik towards the end. I can't see it playing out any other way, to be honest. And the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie, if you haven't seen it, was actually pretty good. I would like to see the absolute car crash of an original edit, if that exists out there. But what we actually got, pretty good. It's not the best film in the world, but if you've got young kids or you're in Sonic the Hedgehog, definitely go and watch it. And I am looking forward to the sequel. Now, back to the games. A Game Boy Color game that was cancelled 20 years ago is now heading to Kickstarter next week. Infinity, a strategy RPG that was originally developed way back in 1999 by Alchemic Software, had a bit of a harsh start in life. So this game was being developed and was getting ready to publish just as the Game Boy Color was pretty much at the end of its life and the Game Boy Advance was on the horizon. Unfortunately, they never found a publisher that was willing to release the game so late in the Game Boy Color's life. And eventually, after trying multiple publishers, they disbanded and the game was left incomplete. Now, 20 years later, a new team called Incubate has formed. Now, this is actually made up of new developers and some of the veterans from the original Alchemic Software. And together, they are finishing the game and they plan to release it physically on the Game Boy Color. If anyone's interested, they can head over to Kickstarter. There'll be a link in the description below. And they can actually have a look, see if it's something to be interested in. It does look pretty good. It's got that 8-bit Game Boy charm. Now, there's only so much you can do with this old hardware, but it looks a pretty interesting strategy RPG, of which there wasn't too many of on the Game Boy Color. So this would be quite interesting and maybe a good game to add to your collection. And once again, as always comes up whenever we discuss new games for old systems, is there really a place for new titles on old hardware? Now, everyone knows my thoughts on this. I do genuinely think if a game is good and it's on an old system, it can have a good shot. Obviously, if they can also bring it to modern systems, that's much better for the developer, and I don't think they should just limit themselves to old systems. But I would be willing to take a punt on this and get a brand new role-playing game for my Game Boy Color if the game is good. Now, they reckon that this game will have over 20 hours of gameplay. So that's pretty sizable for a Game Boy Color game. I'd love to know if anyone out there is thinking of picking this up, whether it interests them, or if they think this is just a bad move on the developer and publisher's part. Let us know in the comments below, or you can leave us a message. Now, we're getting to the meat of the episode. So, in the last 24 hours of me recording this, we have had not one, but 2 indie showcases by large platform holders. So, first of all, we'll go through some of the titles at the Microsoft Indie Showcase, where they've shown off over 60 titles. Now, we're not going to go through all 60. I have picked a couple of retro and retro-inspired titles to go through, and just a couple of titles that personally I think look pretty good. If you want to see the full list of them, it is available on the Xbox Newswire, which we'll leave a link in the description below. Now, the first title I'm going to talk about is A Little Witch in the Woods, which has a really charming pixel art style. Now, the title is a role-playing game and a life simulator kind of rolled into one. And you take control of a little witch who lives in the woods. I don't know an awful lot beyond that, but it's definitely a game that I'll be following. Next up is Echo Generation. Now, this is a traditional role-playing game, turn-based role-playing game, and has a very nice voxel graphic style. So for those who don't know what a voxel is, it's just think Minecraft. It's basically a 3D pixel. Watching the trailer, I did get a very strong Stranger Things vibe, so it looks like it might be quite a good game for children or anyone who's interested in things like Stranger Things or E.T., where it's the wonder of a child being able to go on an adventure, save the world, and again, it looks really good. Now, this is coming to Xbox One and Series X, as most of these games are, since it is the Microsoft Indie Showcase, but will also be available on Steam for PC. Next up is a title that I'm sure Anthony will be all over, called Riftbreaker. Now, this is a weird combination of a top-down role-playing game, a base building game, and a tower defense game. So you've been stranded on an alien planet, and it's your job to get off that planet. To do so, you need to adventure throughout the world and secure the resources that you need to build the rift to take you back home. However, the inhabitants of that planet aren't too happy that you are setting up base there and will attack your base, which is where the tower defense part comes in. Now, while the role-playing aspects of the game seem to be the predominant part, the base building and the tower defense game look pretty good. Depending on the units that come and attack your base, you need different types of defenses and turrets. For example, physical kinetic weapons won't have much effect against a stone type enemy, but if an enemy is fire based, maybe your flamethrowers will have negligible impact on them. So there is some strategy in how you plan out your base. Again, this will be coming to Xbox One and Xbox Series X. If, however, you're looking for something a little bit more relaxing than constantly being assaulted by alien marauders, then perhaps Alchemic Cutie might be a bit more up your street. So this game describes itself as a wholesome, relaxing RPG in which you tame wild jelly-like creatures while uncovering the secrets of Wimber Island. This title looks like it would be a nice title just to sit back, relax, and idle some time away over. If you're looking for something that's quite cute, but maybe a bit more involved, a bit more hectic, then Demon Turf may actually be a little bit more up your street. Now, this title is a 3D environment, but with 2D sprites for the characters, which gives it a very cartoony look. If you've ever seen Sonic Robo Blast 2, the absolutely fantastic fan-made Sonic game, then it's very similar aesthetics to that. In the title, you take control of a little, I assume, a demon who can actually shapeshift, which allows them to navigate the environment. For example, if you want to explore underwater, you can shapeshift into a little octopus. It looks very charming, and again, another game I'll keep an eye out. And finally, Blaster Master 03 finally comes to the Xbox, and it's bringing along Blaster Master 0 and 02 with it as well. So this game is a sequel series to a title that was originally on the NES Blaster Master, and sees you take control of a soldier in a little tank as you navigate various platforming obstacles. You can also leave your tank, in which case it goes to an overhead view as you run around shooting enemies. It's really fun. I've got Blaster Master 0 on the Switch, and I'll likely be picking up 0, 2, and 3 on the Xbox, because I need to get those achievements. One last thing that was announced is the phenomenal Stardew Valley will be coming to Game Pass during this autumn. So anyone who has not played that game, first of all, why not? It's so great. I own it at least 3 times. It's free if you've got Game Pass. So download it, play it, and like lose hours of your life in a single go. It's fantastic. Anyone who's a fan of old style Harvest Moon or more recently Story of Seasons, definitely pick it up. Fantastic game. Definitely worth it. Oh, right, we're almost there. Now that there's Microsoft out the way, let's go on to Nintendo, which thankfully, mercifully, was a much shorter event. Now, first up, Bombrush Cyberfunk is what they decided to open up the event on. And anyone who's seen this game already will instantly recognize the style. This is undoubtedly the spiritual successor to Jet Set Radio or Jet Grind Radio. It's so good that if you just rebranded this as Jet Set Radio 3, I would not be any the wiser. Fantastic looking game. Now, this unfortunately is only due to release next year, and unfortunately is becoming a timed exclusive to Nintendo Switch, because I really wanted to pick this up on the Xbox. It's not the end of the world. I fortunately do have a Switch, so I will be picking this up on my Switch without a doubt. I just wish I could have got it on my Xbox. Moving on to the next title that I want to talk about is Garden Story, a rather peculiar role-playing game. Now, this title, you seem to be playing a pea or a grape as you protect the garden against the invasive rot and rebuild your home. Again, it was a little bit light on information about the game, but this looks pretty cool, actually. Again, a lovely pixel art style. And once again, this is a timed exclusive to Nintendo Switch. However, if you have got a Nintendo Switch and you are interested in it, this released today of me doing this podcast, so by the time you hear of it, it'll be available to download from the Nintendo Switch eShop. And the final title I want to talk about from the Nintendo Indie Showcase is Metal Slug Tactics. Now, we saw this at, I believe it was Summer Game Fest, around about the time that E3 was running. And once again, this is another fantastic retro-style game being published by .mu, and it looks amazing. It captures that Metal Slug aesthetic perfectly and puts it into a strategy title. Now, they shown off a bit more of the game, a few more of the tactics that you can use. So, depending on how you position your units, you can actually get them to sync up attacks to deal extra damage. And again, this, as soon as this comes out, this is going to be a day one purchase from me. And if they make a physical edition, I'm snapping that up straight away. Now, this game, unfortunately, yet again, is a 2022 release. But as more information comes out, I'm sure we'll be banging on about this over and over and over again. Basically, if you like Metal Slug and you like Final Fantasy Tactics style games, this is the game for you. This is the game to pick up. Now, the final game we're going to talk about is Axiom Verge 2, which everyone was hoping would be shown at the Nintendo Indie Showcase. Mainly because they just want to know when the game comes out. And amazingly, it's out now. They just shadow dropped it. It's available now to download on the Switch, and later in the day, again when I'm recording this, it's available on the PlayStation 4 and the Epic Game Store. They have announced that a PlayStation 5 version is coming soon, but no firm date on that. Unfortunately, it is not coming to the Xbox. Now, for those who haven't played the original Axiom Verge, why haven't you played it? Just go out there and play it. It's a rather unique Metroid-like title. It's definitely worth a play, holds up really well, and thankfully, you do not even need to play that game if you want to jump straight into Axiom Verge 2. They've announced that although it's set in the same overarching story, it's completely separate. You do not need to play one to understand the other. And again, if you have a Switch, a PlayStation 4, or use the Epic Game Store for your PC games, you can go out and you can pick this up as soon as you're hearing this podcast. So that's pretty cool. And with that, I come to the end of this episode. Now, I know this one's a little bit briefer than our usual episodes, maybe a little bit more densely packed with titles and news. Unfortunately, it was just me this episode. But on the plus side, I think I've set some sort of speedrunning record for the podcast. Although hopefully we'll be back next week and the full team will be here. So once again, if you would like any more information about anything mentioned within this episode, please check out the description where you can find the full show notes, or you can visit us at retrogamingdads.co.uk for the full show notes.